Hello, all you wonderful people watching on YouTube. This is the Skeptical Skeptic back again, and this time I thought I would do my very first response video on this channel. Anyway, the video I'm going to be responding to this time is called 10 Great Reasons to be Catholic by Matthew Kelly, a Catholic Australian speaker and writer on the YouTube channel Dynamic Catholic. Now, this YouTube channel is fairly small. It only has barely above 20,000 subscribers, although in fairness, my channel doesn't even have 10. The reason I am going to be going after this video in particular is because, one, when I was in Catholic school, we would watch a few videos from this channel, including this one, so, bring back old memories, and, two, I am an atheist who used to be Catholic, so I think it's only proper that I address the points made within it to show why there are actually no good reasons whatsoever to be a Catholic. Anyway, let's get right on with the video.
I love being Catholic.
I don't.
And there are an infinite number of great reasons to be Catholic. But let's just take a look at 10 of them. You can't put these things in order, and we could argue about the order until the end of the world. But here they are.
So, real quick, before I actually get into the reasons given, can I just say that I cannot stand the presentation of this guy? Everything about this video, and in fact most of the videos on this channel, is just so incredibly artificial and stilted. I feel like I'm watching a cheesy daytime television commercial with the pretentious background music, the weird blank background that, by the way, is going to have a bunch of words popping up behind it throughout the video, and the plastered-on smile and the unnaturally nice way of talking. I'm serious when I say that there are just way too many videos on this channel that are just pure unadulterated cringe. And this is not even just due to the religious aspect of it. Like, for example, this channel released these awful Jehovah's Witness-style cartoons about 5 months ago, and they are just... oh, wow.
Where's your quiet place, Sarah?
You know how I have that big beanbag in the middle of my room?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite places to talk to God. It's so comfortable and fuzzy. I always feel like it's God just giving me a big, pink, fuzzy hug.
Bad touch!
Again, compare the way this guy presents himself in this video to another Catholic YouTube channel with way more subscribers, by the way. I wonder why. Called Ascension Presents by Father Mike Schmitz. Seriously, choose which one you would rather listen to.
In the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 15, there's this big crisis. And the crisis is the apostles have been evangelizing the Jews. So basically, they were all Jews, and they realized Jesus is the fulfillment of Judaism. Jesus is the Messiah we've been waiting for. So they're sharing the good news with Jewish people. It was awesome. But then they realized, because Peter had a vision, and Paul was called to do this too, that they were called to bring the gospel to non-Jews, which is amazing and good because I'm a non-Jew, and I get to be brought in, right, to the people of God.
Now, Ascension Presents is equally as ridiculous in the actual substance of what it tries to espouse, but just listen to the stark difference in presentation between the two. One is speaking in a natural conversational manner, down to earth, actually trying to say something in a real setting without a stupid fake background, no annoying cheesy music playing. It is so much more stomachable than this Matthew Kelly guy. Anyway, just thought I'd get that out there first, rant over. Now onto the reasons. Let's see why I should consider rejoining the Catholic Church. Let's get into it.
Number 10. This is the church that Jesus Christ started and sent the Holy Spirit to guide. It's unique. It's the original.
The Catholic Church is not the original church that Jesus Christ started, and neither are any of the Christian denominations that are around today. But oh yes, the Catholic Church sure does get a lot of mileage out of claiming that it was. Let me ask you this. Did Jesus Christ ever say to use billions of dollars in donations to construct elaborate adorned structures and walk around in fancy gold-plated robes through a hallway with a gold ceiling leading to one of the most valuable and significant art pieces ever created? No, Jesus couldn't shut the fuck up about how wealth and possessions are bad things and how you need to abandon them and follow him instead. His apostles literally set up a socialist church where they all sold their possessions and shared the proceeds among themselves communally. The Catholic Church is enormously wealthy, and it isn't even known how deep its pockets actually go due to the incalculable investments all over the world. Don't even try to tell me that the Catholic Church as it exists now is the one founded by Jesus Christ and his apostles. On top of that, whenever Catholics try to make this claim, they always make it seem like the Catholic Church has always been this undivided, unified entity throughout its history that has always remained exactly the same throughout the centuries, which is simply not true at all. You really think that the Catholic Church of today is the same exact church as there was 400 years ago? Of course not. The institution of the Catholic Church has obviously evolved over time, and there is a long history of infighting and disagreements over doctrine within the Church throughout its history, just like there is today. According to the World Almanac, there have been 38 anti-popes throughout the reign of the Catholic Church who were illegitimate claimants to the papal throne and had significant support of important factions within the Church. Also, a bit of an inconvenient fact, but there were many different denominations of Christianity that existed before the official establishment of the Roman Catholic Church, making it much harder to claim that Catholicism was the original church. As the religion of Christianity expanded over time from its Jewish roots, it became increasingly fractured, with many different sects, cults, and movements lacking strong unifying characteristics. There was great variety in Christian interpretation of doctrine in its early centuries, and arguments about what writings were even supposed to be accepted. It was not until the year 380 AD that, with the Edict of Thessalonica, the Roman Empire officially adopted Trinitarian Christianity as its state religion, reinforcing the Council of Nicaea held earlier in the year 325 AD that held all other forms of Christian theology, such as Christian Arianism, to be heresy. So no, it wasn't as if the Catholic version of Christianity was just always the dominant one and no other denominations ever existed before the 16th century. There were many different versions of Christianity that existed for over 3 centuries after the birth of the religion, and they only disappeared because the Roman government held up one sect above all others and put so-called heretics to death. That is the real reason for the Catholic hegemony seen over millennia, violent oppression by governmental action. And after the Roman government collapsed, the Catholic Church remained as the only unifying force to implement some sort of control over the continent, which would explain its dominance. Oh, and also, even if it was true that the Catholic Church really is the original church that hasn't changed at all over the course of nearly 2 millennia, why would that be a good thing? What that implies is that there should never be change or progression or improvements. Just because something is original doesn't mean it is automatically the best version, and considering the brutal and unforgiving nature of the Catholic Church in the past, I'm glad the Catholic Church has changed over time.
Number 9, the Catholic Church has relieved more suffering than any other group in the history of the world. We care for the sick, the hungry, the lonely, the homeless, the uneducated, and the imprisoned. I love being part of that.
Do you love being part of an institution that has a known decades-long history of sexual abuse of children by clergy members and that systematically covered the abuse up and took steps to protect its abusers from justice? It is true that the Catholic Church has done a great deal of charity in the name of God, but you can't, just like you can't give God the credit for puppy dogs and rainbows without also giving him credit for tapeworms and Ebola, you can't just give the Catholic Church credit for the good things it has done while also not giving it credit for the incredible amount of suffering it has caused over the course of its reign. From on a large scale, the horror and cruelty of the Inquisition, to on a small scale, the fear and guilt instilled on a small child who is told that he will be tortured for eternity in hell if he steps out of line. On top of that, there are tons of groups that care for the sick, hungry, lonely, homeless, uneducated, and imprisoned, many of them secular, and though the Catholic Church is much larger than most of those organizations, it also spends a lot of its efforts and funds trying to brainwash impressionable children into believing in this dogma. As an individual, I can do a lot more good joining and donating to a smaller, secular, non-profit organization that focuses entirely on humanitarian aid and caring for the environment, rather than a bloated church that only seeks improving people's lives as a side job to make it look good and attract more people to its real goal of controlling people's lives with its particular Christian doctrine. I went to Catholic school, by the way, and quite honestly, I was taught a lot more about what prayers I should do and what holy days I should go to church on than about how I should make a tangible, positive difference in the world.
Number 8, we have history and mystery. To really understand Christianity, you need a historical perspective, and the history of Christianity is Catholic. For more than 1,500 years, there were no Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, Anglicans, Pentecostals, Lutherans, Mormons, evangelical Christians, non-denominational Christians. Today, there are more than 25,000 different Christian denominations, but they all lack the rich and beautiful history that we have as Catholics. We have history and we have mystery. We know that it's all right not to have the answer to everything. Some things are a mystery, and that's okay.
Ah, yes, mystery. Can't tell you how many times that word was thrown around when I was in Catholic school. It's basically just a cop-out where any time something in Catholic doctrine about divinity doesn't make a single lick of sense, it will just be explained as, it's a mystery. Also, the point about you needing a historical perspective to have a thorough understanding of Christianity, I agree. problem is you don't necessarily need to be a Catholic to understand Catholicism and understand the history of the Church, just like you don't need to be a Hindu to understand the history of Hinduism, for example. Also, I absolutely despise the implication made here. Because something has been around for a long time, that automatically means it's more worthy and deserves more credence? That's an argument from hegemony, and it's complete bullshit. You might as well say, for instance, that the ancient Egyptian civilization was around for 3,000 years. Therefore, ancient Egyptian culture is superior. After all, it's been around so long. The fact that other denominations of Catholicism do not have the same length of history or dominance is not an argument for becoming a Catholic at all, especially since the entire millennia plus in which the Catholic Church was the dominant power in Europe was a terrible time to be alive, with horrible repression and substandard living conditions. And it was really only after the Catholic Church began to lose some of its influence in Europe and other denominations came into the picture that society in many parts of the West climbed out of the Dark Ages and started to actually progress. And again, as I said before, it's not even true that there were no other variations of Christianity before the Protestant Reformation. Stop trying to rewrite history.
Number 7, we have the saints. These are the great heroes and heroines of Christianity. They're the most diverse group of people in history. Some were rich, some were poor. Some were educated, some were uneducated. Some were young, and some were old. They have lived in every century, on every continent, and in every country, and they all tried to be the best version of themselves. Now, they're in heaven, cheering you on.
First of all, no one is in heaven cheering me on. Heaven does not exist. You know what, though? I'll actually half agree with this point. One major issue I take with many Protestant denominations is that they tend to give way too much focus on the afterlife and the scriptures and God, and they don't tend to put as much emphasis on the real world and real people in it who actually accomplish things. It is good, in my opinion, that the Catholic Church does make some effort to celebrate the accomplishments and lives of actual people, rather than just worshiping God 24/7, and seems to hold that our actions in the physical world do matter up to a point. However, the issue I take with this reason for being Catholic is that there are a great many saints that should absolutely not be celebrated for what they did in their lives. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go through all of the 10,000 plus saints that are officially recognized by the Vatican, but I will, however, read you a short section from my favorite book of all time, Cosmos, by Carl Sagan, where he talks about the decline of the Alexandrian Library, the greatest and most comprehensive source of knowledge and wisdom at the time. The last scientist who worked in the library was a mathematician, astronomer, physicist, and head of the Neoplatonic school of philosophy, an extraordinary range of accomplishments for any individual of any age. Her name was Hypatia. She was born in Alexandria in 370 AD. At a time when women had few options and were treated as property, Hypatia moved freely and unselfconsciously through traditionally male domains. By all accounts, she was a great beauty. She had many suitors, but rejected all offers of marriage. The Alexandria of Hypatia's time, by then long under Roman rule, was a city under grave strain. Slavery had sapped classical civilizations of its vitality. The growing Christian church was consolidating its power and attempting to eradicate pagan influence and culture. Hypatia stood at the epicenter of these mighty social forces. Cyril, the Archbishop of Alexandria, despised her because of her close relationship with the Roman governor, and because she was a symbol of learning and science, which were largely identified by the early church with paganism. In great personal danger, she continued to teach and publish until, in the year 415 AD, on her way to work, she was set upon by a fanatical mob of Cyril's parishioners. They dragged her from her chariot, tore off her clothes, and armed with abalone shells, flayed her flesh from her bones. Her remains were burned, her works obliterated, her name forgotten. Cyril was made a saint. The glory of the Alexandrian Library is a dim memory. Its last remnants were destroyed soon after Hypatia's death. It was as if the entire civilization had undergone some self-inflicted brain surgery, and most of its memories, discoveries, ideas, and passions were extinguished. The official saint title given to Cyril is the Pillar of Faith. One does not have to go that far back in history to find examples of so-called holy saints who are far less than benevolent. Hell, just look at Mother Teresa, practically hailed by Catholics and non-Catholics alike as wholly benevolent standard of goodness that everyone should strive for and who could do no wrong. However, Mother Teresa was actually involved in a lot of shady business practices during her service, with her clinics receiving millions of dollars in donations, yet having utterly appalling conditions where the poor she was supposed to be caring for suffered and died with great shortages of medical care, diagnosis, painkillers, and nutrition. Teresa is quoted as saying, "Pain means Jesus is near you. Suffering is an opportunity to share in the passion of Christ." She believed that suffering was a gift from God and made no effort to actually make serious strides against it, instead inviting people into her clinics to die after getting baptized and funneling much of the money she received from donations into the deep pockets of the Catholic Church. As I said before, I can't go through all the saints recognized by the Vatican, but I think you get the point. Many of the saints celebrated by the Catholic Church had dirty skeletons in their closet, and were largely canonized for their efforts to increase the power and influence of the Catholic Church, rather than any good they might have done to improve the world.
Number 6, we believe in the power of prayer. At every moment of every day, Mass is being prayed in thousands of places around the world. That's our family, Catholic Church, praying for the whole world. We don't just pray for Catholics, we pray for everyone. Imagine how different the history of the world would have been if the Catholic Church had never offered a single prayer.
This one is just funny. First of all, most Christian denominations believe in the efficacy of prayer. It's not just Catholics, okay? I, for one, do not believe in the efficacy of prayer, and in the first YouTube video I ever made on my old channel, which I will be re-uploading to this channel in the future, I explain in a video essay why I don't believe that prayer makes any tangible difference whatsoever. The long and short of it is that there is no evidence in any study that has actually been done that prayer has any impact at all on the real world, and it's basically just you doing absolutely nothing and feeling good about yourself because you feel like you made some sort of difference. You asked me to imagine how different the history of the world would have been if the Catholic Church had never offered a single prayer. And you know what, even though prayer does absolutely nothing, I think a world where no one ever offered a single prayer would be a different world, a better world, where people would actually focus more on putting in effort themselves to try to right the wrongs of the world rather than just leaving it all up to an imaginary deity. To quote American atheist founder Madalyn Murray O'Hair, 2 hands working can do more than 1,000 clasped in prayer.
Number 5, it's the same all around the world. I took a group of people on pilgrimage a few years ago to Italy. We went to Mass in Florence at the cathedral. That night I asked the group about their experience of attending Mass in Italian. They said, even though I don't speak Italian, I still knew what was going on. Catholicism is the same everywhere. And that's a beautiful thing.
Wait. That's supposed to be a good thing? I attended Catholic Mass for 10 plus years, and it was one of the most boring experiences I've ever been through. And you're telling me that Catholic Mass is the exact same everywhere you go? Oh, I'm definitely staying away from Catholicism then. I mean, at least my dad's non-denominational church that I went to sometimes, non-denominational basically being code for Baptist, but you're allowed to drink alcohol and use guitars and church songs. But yeah, in my dad's church, you could actually pay attention to the speakers and be somewhat captivated by the music. While when I attended Catholic Mass, I literally developed a subconscious signal in my brain that activated whenever it started, causing me to not be able to pay attention at all in order to drown out how incredibly boring it was. The fact that Catholic Mass is supposed to be the same everywhere you go is a reason why you shouldn't be a Catholic.
Number 4, the Catholic Church is the premier defender of human rights. For 2,000 years, we've been defending the rights of people, whether they're Catholic or not. It shows that Catholicism is not just self-interest. And that's a beautiful thing too.
First point I'll make about this is that anyone who claims to base their moral code on the Holy Bible is definitely not a defender of human rights, because the purpose of the Holy Bible is not to defend human rights, but instead to defend God's rights, specifically his rights to enslave his creations and bend them to his will under threat of death or hellfire. Second point I'll make about the Catholic Church specifically is that while the Catholic Church of today does do some part to speak out against injustices in the world today and stand up for human rights and is against the death penalty, the Catholic Church has certainly not been sticking up for human rights for the past 1700 years of its history, much of which people were burned to death for heresy, among the Church's many other unforgivable crimes against humanity. For crying out loud, some of the most horrific and cruel torture devices ever invented, think the rack, water torture, heretic's fork, the breast ripper, were specifically endorsed by popes in the past. Also, even though the current Pope Francis is somewhat more tolerant, progressive, and humanitarian than popes of the past, speaking out against things like global poverty, inequality, and war, his efforts to try to actually reform the Catholic Church are being met with considerable pushback from a conservative faction of clergy members within the Church, and the Catholic Church still condemns the rights of same-sex couples to get married, the rights of women to get abortions, and the rights of people to use condoms so that they don't get AIDS.
You might be smited by AIDS here on Earth, but if you wear a condom, it's not going to protect you from the fires of hell.
Don't try to tell me that the Catholic Church is some great humanistic supporter of human rights, because it's not.
Number 3, you need to be part of something bigger than yourself. Life's not about you. It's about loving God by laying down your life in service of other people. You could lay down your life for money, you could lay down your life for a sport or for a career or for stuff. People do. What a waste. The Catholic Church has the most important mission in the world, and you're invited to get involved and be a part of that great mission.
What exactly does this have to do with Catholicism specifically? Most Christian traditions hold up the value of self-sacrifice and service, not just Catholicism, so why would this be a reason to be Catholic? Why would this even be a reason to be Christian in the first place? Plenty of secular humanists believe that they belong to a cause that's bigger than themselves, and honestly, I find the idea of doing goodness for goodness sake much more noble than just doing good for the sake of pleasing God. Because that's what it really comes down to in the end. Christianity doesn't truly extol loyalty to man, it extols loyalty to God, and I am not all about that. You say that devoting your life to things like sports or money or your career is such a waste, but the ultimate waste of your life would have to be dedicating it to worshiping a deity that isn't even there. Ever think about that? Also, that line about how life's not all about you, if you meant that as meaning that you are not the center of the universe and there are billions of other people who live their lives just like you do, so you need to keep things in perspective, then I would have absolutely no problem with the sentiment of life's not all about you. But since I was raised in Catholicism, I know what you really mean when you say that. What you're basically saying is that you should not care about what you want, and should only be focused on what God wants and how to serve other people. Basically, anything that makes you happy or gives you pleasure, especially sexually, is improper and unimportant because it does not serve God's plan for humanity. Just wanted to make that clear before I move on.
Number 2, the Eucharist. Jesus Christ, truly present in the Eucharist. There's nothing like it. It's the ultimate spiritual food.
What? What the fuck?
That's fucking right. I've kidnapped Jesus. Here he is. See that? There's Jesus. Delicious, edible, cracker symbolic Jesus.
Oh my gosh! Oh yes, we should all be Catholic so that when we consume the Eucharist, it isn't just a piece of unleavened bread, it's the ultimate spiritual food, God made flesh that we eat, even though it just looks, tastes, and feels like a regular cracker. Oh my gosh! How do any Catholics still defend the concept of transubstantiation? It's ridiculous. Oh my gosh, I've eaten the Eucharist countless times. I ate it while I was a Christian, while I was an agnostic, while I was an atheist, when I was at a Catholic church, when I was at a non-denominational church, while I was at a Lutheran church. Guess what? It tasted the exact same every single time. And I never once felt as though I was being spiritually nourished. Seriously, it's just fucking bread, dude. But also, what is the logic in this anyway? You won't receive the body of Jesus in the Eucharist unless you believe in the tenets of Catholicism? How does that make any sense? You're basically just saying that beliefs can change the nature of reality. Well, I guess that's pretty much religion in a nutshell, isn't it? Oh, man. Oh, that was so dumb. Anyway, let's move on to the final reason why I should be Catholic and see if it has any merit. Let's do this.
And finally, number 1. You don't say no to God when he invites you. There are some invitations we don't turn down.
Wow. Okay, wow. Just wow. You somehow managed to save the dumbest reason to be Catholic for last. First of all, yet again, this has nothing to do with Catholicism or Christianity in general. There are plenty of individuals in other denominations of Christianity and in other religions like Judaism or Islam where people talk about how God called them to be faithful and serve him. It has nothing to do with Catholicism in particular, and is actually pretty good evidence that no one religion is correct, and instead there are just some crazy people out there who believe that they have been called by God to do his work, and they pick whichever religion hits closest home for them to latch onto and try to spread to others. Secondly, how could I say no to God's invitation if I never got one? God has never made his presence known to me. He never called me to exercise my duty to him, even though if he did exist, he would have every ability to do so, and that's because he doesn't exist. I wasn't invited by God to align myself with the religion of Catholicism. I was indoctrinated by my parents and school into believing in it, before I found out that there was literally no good reason to be Catholic at all, or any member of any religion or denomination for that matter.
I can come up with great reasons to be Catholic all day long.
I doubt it, considering that in this entire video you were only able to come up with one half of a reason, and that's only provided you buy into the whole Christian framework to begin with, which I don't. All of the quote-unquote great reasons to be Catholic you gave were either lies, declined to represent the full picture, weren't reasons at all, were actually reasons why you shouldn't be Catholic, or were really just reasons for being religious and not necessarily Catholic.
But ultimately, you need to come up with some of your own. I can't give you my love of the church. I wish I could, and if I could, I would. But in the end, you have to make Catholicism your own.
Wow, this video was stupid. Anyway, this was my response to Matthew Kelly in his video on Dynamic Catholic, 10 Great Reasons to be Catholic. I know it's kind of low-hanging fruit and pretty easy to make fun of and debunk, but I mean, I'm not doing the straw manning if he's the one presenting the arguments. I mean, honestly, I don't know how some people watch this video and actually agree with it. I mean, I guarantee you it convinced almost no one who wasn't already affiliated with the Catholic Church. It's literally one of the dumbest things I've ever watched. It certainly didn't convince me, not when I first watched it in class as a lukewarm Catholic, and certainly not now as a hardline atheist. I think I really just need an unserious video to make fun of, considering the current state of the nation and everything that's going on in the world right now. Seriously, I'm so fucking tired of everything. Anyway, in the next video I'm going to be making is actually going to be another scripted reaction response, hopefully put out in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be to a video from PragerU, good old PragerU, titled "The Left Ruins Everything," and quite honestly, it's somehow almost as ridiculous and hilarious as the video I just responded to. Anyway, this has been The Skeptical Skeptic. Always remember, be compassionate, be understanding, but most importantly, never stop questioning. Bye. Your God is an awful God, he reigns with an iron fist. His wisdom, power, and love are in very short supply. Your God is an awful God, he'll fall from heaven to earth. Your God is an awful God, and you should probably move on. Have you accepted the flying spaghetti monster as your personal Lord and Savior?